And all the presentations are on this machine. And it's a Macintosh, so it's quite exciting to have a different way of working.
Okay, thank you, Peter. My name's Martin Belcher, and I'll just introduce myself and I'll hand over to Margaret to do some of the presentation in a moment. But we're just going to talk briefly about accessing the scientific information. Some of the presentations this morning we heard about, you know, the important role of science in development and the important role of information in science. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the experiences of promoting access to scientific publications through a program called PERI. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about INASP or PERI. There's a lot of information on the table just at the back there, some leaflets, some handouts, various pieces that please feel free to take them. They're in English and French, and I think some Spanish ones as well. INASP, there's lots of leaflets, as I say. You can find out all about the history. But basically, we're about some of the things that were mentioned this morning: equitable access to information, to the production, to support the production, dissemination, and access to information. So it's not just about providing access; it's about providing capacity development assistance in producing and using information as well. And of course, we've got some keywords that you might expect to see up there in terms of sustainability, capacity development, affordability. PERI is the Programme for the Enhancement of Research Information, and it's a multi-component programme. And so it's not just about saying, here's some information, or here are some training, ICT skills enhancement activities. It's also about strengthening local production, local publication, research and development, local level, regional level, international level, country collaboration and networking are also very important components of the PERI programme. Basically what we're doing is helping researchers get access to information, helping them strengthen the production of their local research outputs information, the visibility of that, increasing the visibility of that, enhancing ICT skills, the skills required to take advantage of this information in the information society, supporting local networks that can, if you like, undertake all of these activities in a sustainable manner, and then supporting research and development around these issues that are particularly important, particularly requested, crucial. The methodology that we're using this programme is using country coordinators and networks and their teams of contacts, if you like, of scientists, researchers, librarians, libraries, institutions, and identifying local needs, if you like, local information needs. Then the country coordinators and their teams are actually planning strategies, implementation of the access, the capacity development, that kind of thing. And then INASP tries to meet the gaps, if you like, and provide the relevant information where necessary. What I'll do is I'll hand over to Margaret, my colleague from Malawi, the University of Malawi, to actually give you an example of what this means in practice in the south.
Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you, Peter. Peter said this is not to be descriptive, so I apologise if most of it is descriptive. I'm Margaret Nguira from the University of Malawi Library System. I've been there since 1968, so I've watched the development of many of these initiatives. I've worked primarily in agriculture and within the last year and a half in health. So when we talk about HINARI, AGORA, IFL, the old Agris system, which I'm told is still alive and well, they've very much been part of my career. And it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak on the PERI system. I'm actually here originally for the Parin African Networking Day tomorrow, but it was a good opportunity to be part of the PERI group because this is an important programme for us. You can see the map of Malawi. I'm sure most of you don't have very much idea about it, except you just occasionally hear bad news. Just a small country in the crack of the south of the Rift Valley of Africa, with the most beautiful lake and the most beautiful scenery, along with its problems. The PERI project in Malawi is managed by a country coordinator in the University of Malawi Libraries. It's been there since 2001. It's bringing access to world-class online scientific information and, of course, social science information. And I would agree with our colleague in the last presentation who said you can't talk about one and not talk about the other. And then one of the important things that INASP also does, funds the training workshops, not funds, but coordinates, gives us ideas and helps customize training workshops. And we've had them in e-content management, ICT troubleshooting, bandwidth managing, publishing support. The screen has just gone kind of brown. That probably means it's not plugged into the electricity and it's about the battery's about to die. Do you think that's right? I can still see it, but it just went a magnitude of light darker. Oh no, you're right, I just haven't scratched the mouse. I'll keep scratching the mouse.
Scratch the mouse, that's the key.
So sustainability issues for e-content. We've come from a decade, the 90s were a decade of disaster for libraries in Southern Africa, and I think also West Africa. I don't know what happened. I can't, structural adjustment, maybe, can we say bad things about at the macro level about policy that really killed us? Things that we're supposed to, there's a book on Malawi by the World Bank, and I apologise to my friends here, but it's called Malawi, Promising Reforms, Bad Luck. It means we took the medicine and we died. So there was no money for paper journals over many, many years. So the coming of e-journals seemed like a wonderful window on the horizon. But of course it's not as simple as that. The INASP PERI project negotiates an enormous discount on the journals, great journals such like the aggregators EBSCO, Host, Emerald and Wiley. And for the first year we didn't have to make any contribution to that. PERI found the funding for us. And then we formed our library consortium in 2003, and Birjana from the Eiffel family of library consortia is here, and this is an important thing that coordinates our activity. And with the consortium in place, Maliko, the Malawi Library and Information Consortium, was able to start encouraging member libraries to find a little bit of funding towards the electronic journals. And strangely, herds of institutions that had not managed to part with a tambala for paper journals suddenly managed to find a little bit of hard currency for electronic journals. So you see, the first year, our 8 members, we managed to contribute $5,000. For this year, $15,000, and we've just managed to get $20,000 committed from our members for next year. So those of you from countries with big bucks, this is nothing, but from Malawi, this is very significant for us. But our management is recognising the importance of e-resources and finding the money in creative ways, like from parallel student programs and income generating programs and things. The scientific community in Malawi, in addition to the scientists within the University of Malawi, the following institutions are members of Maliko, so benefit from the resources: the National Research Council of Malawi, the National AIDS Commission of Malawi, the Malawi Bureau of Standards, and we've done some in-depth training with the officers of Malawi Bureau of Standards in accessing e-content. And in addition, the new Ministry of Science and Technology has just committed that they will also make $2,000 available to us towards our e-journals, so that was a nice kind of commitment from them. They've been hesitating. I know, again, it's not a lot of money, but it's a beginning. This is a very interesting slide here. We've talked about the connectivity aspect, and in Malawi, connectivity was a major problem, and I've presented on that before, and I'll be discussing it a bit tomorrow, that one of the initiatives of the Malawi Library Consortium was to struggle to obtain funding and get in place a network of VSATs from the north to the south of the country in the university campuses to improve connectivity, and about half of the funding came from Open Society Institute, maybe more than half, maybe 2/3 of the funding, and the Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa. And you can see on the 10th of February 2005, the VSATs were switched on. So if you look, I don't know how well you can see the graph, but the red and blue are 2003, 2004, and 2005 is when the VSAT came online. So you can see that's quite a dramatic graph, showing that better bandwidth immediately brings better utilization of e-content. And then you've got to think in terms of cost effective and things like that. But that I find quite exciting. In October I got the data just before I left, and it was too late for me to change, but it was also good. September was not so good because we had a strike on our major major campus, and not a strike of students but a strike of faculty, but that upset the figures. But I think that this is the first time I've put that information together, and it really is quite significant. The content is vital, the connectivity is vital, and the people are more vital. The people have to know what to do with this stuff. And the INASP focus originally was more on perhaps building the capacity of the librarians and some of the technical people, but we negotiated with them to say with us the deans are a critical group. So in this workshop was organised by our late university librarian, and the day he died he actually signed the documentation to make this workshop take place when we brought together the deans. And it was a wonderful workshop. It was about 3 days, and at the end, if I can point to Dr. Kaponda, can you see this slightly larger lady in green? She's the Dean of Postgraduate Research in the College of Nursing, and she danced. She said, now I have 5 papers that I can complete just from access to EBSCOhost. It was wonderful for the librarians as well, because we've had a kind of hostility over a few years between librarians and faculty because of some other issues that were political, and suddenly they said, you know, you people are just like us, which for us was like a warm blanket. So this is a bunch of deans and librarians who ran that workshop, and it was really first class. Dr. Kaponda has gone on. She's got a major research centre, and she was in the same plane as me, going to South Africa, going to the States to confirm some more collaborative relationships. And she has some very major and important research projects. And she also I think she maybe is the one who helped get me transferred to the College of Nursing, whether I liked it or not. And she immediately was willing to pay $1,000 towards the content. She said, now I've helped put the connectivity in the college, of course I'll pay for content. So you build relationships with key people through being able to assist them. And there's other stories there. The Dean of Social Sciences is there as well, and also benefited. Apart from access to the external content, of course, the very important aspect of PERI is Africa Journals Online. I think many of us really value that service, and Malawi participates in AGORA. We have those journals there, and that's just a sample of the Malawi Medical Journal on Africa Journals Online, and I've been doing some negotiation with them over the last few months as to whether they might be willing to become an open access journal, and we're still discussing that. Of course, for scientific output in our countries, there's an awful lot more than access to information and quality of information. There's few scientists in the ground because our life expectancy in Malawi has dropped to 30-something recently. Every time you look at the figures, it's going lower. I think soon we'll not be born because we'll be dead before. Lack of training opportunities. We used to have a good program of international scholarships. Now most of the scholarships are for local degrees, which may not be bad, but just don't give people the bigger picture and the excitement of really being an international person. But at least with, oh yeah, and the other one is the actual resources to do research. Do you have the chemicals? Do you have the transport? Are the labs working? Is the electricity stable? There are so many other parts. But at least with the PERI project, which addresses both the availability of and the access to the international and local content, the information is no longer a constraint in the kind of triangle of things that need to be in place. I was just mentioning briefly an example. Our gentleman from, was it OECD this morning, was talking about the fish, processing the fish and exporting it, and saying sometimes it's not even at that level, it's to manage not to import somebody else's fish. And just as I was leaving to come on Friday morning in the library, a young man from agriculture came, because he knew me there and he knew me in health, and he said, we really want to process our cotton lint in such a way that we no longer have to import cotton wool and gauze and maternity pads. Can you help us get the information so that both for the ginners and the producers our cotton lint can be of that standard? There's a similar issue on cassava. Can the cassava starch be such that it can be used for drugs for our local things? So the information component is an important one in the bigger picture, and we're very happy and appreciative of all the initiatives, INASP in this case, IFL, PERI, AGORA, HINARI, that help us, and then the other people who've helped on bandwidth. So the next challenge is to ensure more local content is visible. Thank you very much. Bye.
You're a bit ahead of schedule.
Yeah, we were told 10 minutes originally. So
okay, so you're told 10 minutes even? No. Okay, so maybe there's time for a couple of clarifying questions, but I'd like to suggest that Dina already comes up from GDN. with the next presenter. Are there a couple of clarifying questions? We don't need a big debate at this moment, but are there a couple of things that are... Yes?
Margaret, would you be able to talk a little bit more about some of the databases that are being maintained at the University of Malawi? We talked earlier this morning about the MAIS database, but I think that those kinds of activities are also relevant to the discussion.
Is that at the end?
We can notice and we can come back to that the discussion. Any other questions perhaps? Okay, thanks very much. Dina, can you introduce yourself a little bit before you... It's easy for the chair.
My name is Dina Al-Halabi and I'm the Regional Program Manager with GDN. What I'll do today is I'll give an overview of the Global Development Network, what we do in supporting social science researchers in developing countries and the challenges we face. I will just start by introducing the Global Development Network, which is into generating, sharing and applying knowledge for development. We're global in the sense that we support multidisciplinary social science research and mobilize resources around the world with the aim of producing policy-relevant research by applying global knowledge locally. We are into development as we showcase research that is produced in developing and transition countries. We help in disseminating this knowledge to the public and to policymakers. We build research capacity to push forward with development, all this with the aim of bridging the gap between research and policy. We are a network that links research institutes from 11 different regions all over the world, covering 100 countries. In each of these 11 regions, we have a partner network that carries out most of the activities of GDN. So we have a partner in the Middle East and North Africa, we have a partner in Sub-Saharan Africa, a partner in Eastern Europe, and so on. The network aims at strengthening these partnerships worldwide. It helps researchers and policymakers to share knowledge and promotes collaboration in different disciplines. GDN has several different activities to promote its, to get on with its main goals. And these are the Global Development Awards competition, which was jointly established by GDN and the government of Japan, and which seeks to raise interest in and foster new knowledge on development issues. There's the Regional Research Competition, which is another grant program, and this is managed by GDN's regional partners, where grantees receive extensive feedback from highly qualified reviewers and are offered special training programs to improve research results. There are regional meetings that are held by the different regional partners, and there's the annual GDN conference that attracts more than 600 participants from all the different regions, including world leaders and experts in social science fields. Another major activity that GDN carries over is the Global Research Project. These projects have a global scope involving researchers from all the different regions. The first project was on explaining growth, the second was on understanding reform, and the third project is on bridging research and policy. And then there's GDNet, which is the online initiative of GDN. GDNet's purpose is to communicate research knowledge effectively to stimulate its application to policy. This is fulfilled through three key objectives: providing social science researchers in developing countries with access to resources to help them do their research better, enabling institutes and researchers in developing countries to communicate their research more effectively to others by linking them into a global network and giving them a voice, building the dissemination capacity of research institutes by providing training, professional support, and other services to upgrade skills in knowledge management. So the guiding principles to achieve these objectives are to communicate locally generated knowledge, to provide social scientists with access to resources, to upgrade skills and build capacity for knowledge management, to serve as the electronic voice of GDN and as a key tool to its capacity building, communications, and community building efforts, and to operate in a decentralized way through regional networks. I will now talk about the achievements so far against these objectives and what GDNet is planning to work on. In terms of access to resources, GDNet has pursued two different strategies to facilitate access to online services. One is by applying strict acceptance procedures and hence performing initial controls at the global level to ensure that researchers accessing the service are based in a developing country and hence are eligible to receive the service. The other strategy is providing access to services at the regional level, and this is done through the regional partner networks. For the global access strategy, GDN offers the service only to researchers who have a researcher profile with GDNet and are from a developing country and also based in a developing country. So GDN does this screening to ensure the eligibility of researchers receiving these services. Services offered through the strategy include access to funding opportunities from the Community of Science database, access to journals, articles through Project Muse. GDNet also provides librarians with a document delivery service through the British Library of Development Studies, BLDS. Based at the IDS in the UK, BLDS holds Europe's largest research collection on economic and social change in developing countries. Free access to data from more than 80 countries is also provided through the GDN Data Initiative, including economic and financial indicators, a toolkit for researchers, data exchanges, and data support services. The regional strategy allows researchers to have access to online services where the service is provided on a regional basis. So unlike the first strategy, the service is not made available to all researchers on the knowledge base that meet the eligibility criteria, but there is another level of screening, and this is the regional level. The service is offered through the regional partner networks, and GDN has pursued the strategy in its agreement with JSTOR, where researchers in the CIS region were given free access to online journals offered by JSTOR, and the same arrangement has recently been agreed for researchers in the MENA region. Another service that GDN offers its researchers is the repository of researchers, research work, and research organizations available on the knowledge base. And the knowledge base is basically the heart of GDNet. It brings together social science knowledge from the developing world into one searchable web directory. The knowledge base consists of 3 interlinked databases featuring almost 10,000 summaries of recent scholarly papers with links to their full text, and profiles of the authors and their organizations. And to be featured, the research has to be generated in a developing country by a local organization, and it has to have some policy relevance. And the value added that GDNet offers is that it repackages this research by providing a clear, concise, user-friendly summary to the research project that is consistent for all research, providing the aim of the research, the main findings, and the major policy implications. The knowledge base also features profiles of around 4,500 researchers linked to their CVs, papers, and publications, and profiles of their home organization. And it also features more than 3,000 organizations with links to affiliated researchers, publications, and websites. When the knowledge base was created with its 3 different subsets of research work, researchers, and organizations, the question arose as to how should this data be organized? Should it be done thematically, or do we go on about it by region? And it was agreed that each region had its own characteristics and its own issues, so that it makes more sense for research to be organized by region. A needs assessment was then conducted when GDNet staff visited the research networks in the different regions to identify potential collaborators. This was followed by an engagement exercise where these potential networks were given specific targets for a certain period of time to go out and find research documents, research organizations, and encourage researchers to register on the site. Based on this exercise, GDN's regional network partners were chosen to create and develop the regional windows. There are currently 4 regional windows in operation. The Africa window, the MENA window, the window for Eastern Europe, and the CIS window. These windows are intended to disseminate homegrown expertise, stimulate networking within the region, and offer local research communities a window to the world. Each window brings together high-quality, policy-related social science research from the region, and besides featuring research, it showcases researchers and research institutes, plus news, jobs, events, and funding opportunities relevant to this region's research community. Ownership here is of key importance. It was not possible for the regional windows to be run efficiently by the core team at the Secretariat. So rather, the success of these windows is built on the commitment of the regional partners, which comes with the feeling of ownership. The third service that GDNet offers its community is capacity building. GDNet sees information management staff in developing country research institutes, whether librarians, administrators, researchers or web technicians, as a key group in the knowledge value chain. This is why GDNet is developing a program of skill building and knowledge sharing and information management that provides tools to support researchers and knowledge managers in their work. The pilot was the Africa Capacity Building Program, where GDN organized a workshop to enhance the knowledge sharing and research dissemination capacity of research institutes and researchers in Africa. The workshop was held in Cairo last February, and it was attended by 52 participants from 25 different countries in Africa. The format of the workshop was very participatory, with very few presentations, which allowed for a lot of interaction and networking among participants to share ideas and solutions to challenges faced in research, communication, and knowledge sharing. The workshop was quite successful, and many participants expressed their interest in working together with GDN to develop the program further. And a few organizations pledged their support to GDN, including the Africa Capacity Building Foundation and the African Union. Phase 2 of the program entails holding 2 country-level workshops that would focus primarily on research institutes and networks within the country and address issues of knowledge management and knowledge sharing specific to that country. Another regional workshop is planned towards the end of the 2-year period that goes in-depth in tools and techniques of knowledge sharing across Africa. Toolkits will be developed based on the outcomes of these workshops. And another activity that is planned is developing an Africa e-journal. And all these activities aim at building a community of practitioners and developing products of interest to support this community in doing their work better. I would like to conclude with the lessons learned, what we've learned basically through the GDNet experience in helping social science researchers in developing countries. We've learned that the process has to be participatory, the community has to be engaged, it has to be demand-driven, and the requirements have to be identified. You can offer as many incentives as you like, but the community will still not be engaged. So this is quite a challenge. As mentioned before, regional ownership and leadership are key. Having strong partnerships is also very important. There has to be value added, where it is not just the technology that does the job out there, but there has to be some processing done to ensure some level of quality. And finally, we have to bridge knowledge into the policy arena. And I guess the key the key lesson that we've learned is that there is no substitute for human interaction, even in the internet age. Thank you.
Thanks very much. The speakers are way ahead of schedule on there. I mean, I thought it was 20, maybe I said 10 originally. So you're perfect presentations. Does somebody have a question or clarification? Yes, sir.
Thank you. It was very helpful presentation. I have one question about the content. You said there's abstract and then there's link to full text in many cases. Those full texts are previously published articles, or are they reports, or what is the nature of those full texts?
These are reports, working papers that are already available on the net. But if a researcher has a work that is not, the full text is not available on the internet, we can actually host that and link it to the abstract.
So they could be in a journal article?
Not if it has copyrights, then if it's already on the net, then maybe we can link to it if the author has the copyright to that.
So only stuff that is already...
Yeah. Or if it's not already online and the author has the copyright to that and they ask us to host it, we can host it and link it to the abstract.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who is the Africa partner?
AERC in Kenya.
Okay.
Can you Google it?
GDN?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the things are all available to anybody who uses Google, yeah? Because it seems like more and more people, their only information-seeking strategy now is Google.
With JSTOR and Project Muse, do you have to pay for that? Do the regions pay? How does the funding work on that side?
GDN pays on behalf of the regional partner.
For how long? For how long?
It's a yearly subscription because we renew it for them on a yearly basis.
Yeah, but okay, but for how long do you intend to renew it?
As long as we have funding for that.
Yes.
I have a question about JSTOR that just occurred to me. Are you funding individual researchers in an institution, or are you funding the institution itself to have JSTOR access?
We're funding the institution which provides the data of their individual institutions.
So AERC is the African partner of
Yeah, but ARC do not have this established yet. We only have it for 2 regions currently: the Middle East and North Africa, and Russia and the CIS countries.
I'm asking these questions because the Partnership for Higher Education in Africa, for which I work, has also been in conversation with JSTOR, and I want to be sure that if the partnership moves forward, there's a synergy between.
Okay, maybe we can talk about this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a last question? Yes, Wes?
I tried to write this down almost exactly. You can offer as many incentives as you like, and the community will still not be engaged. Okay, would you want to say something more about that? Because that fits pretty well our experience.
Yeah, I mean, because we offer them with all these, services. You have access to online journals, you have access to funding opportunities, and what we really want the researchers to do is to be engaged, to go in and, register their profile, to continuously update it and continuously add new research, link it to their profile, and talk to people about it, and we still don't have that. People are reluctant to go in and be engaged, and so we have to keep running after them, we have to keep reminding them, you're offering them all this and you're expecting that they'd run at it and, be really engaged, but it doesn't happen. So we have to continuously think of ways of how to keep them engaged and how to keep them coming back and being actively involved in the initiative.
I know it's really too simplistic, but part of it is bandwidth and having a computer on your desk,
sure.
And part of it is a lot of other things. Can you separate those two?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, maybe I can talk about this because we've done this with the Africa program and the challenges that people face. Definitely part of it is the technical aspect of it, but a lot of it is part of the culture. And the culture, people are reluctant to host their work, to put their work online. They're reluctant to. A lot of it is based on the culture itself, and the researchers, they're just not. You have to change people's culture and the way they think, and let them know that this is a tool for you and it's meant to help you and not work against you.
Please.
Having access and paying all of this money to having access to open journals and other stuff. Why we don't start with awareness raising and capacity building programs, and then if we are sure that those researchers will utilize efficiently their resources, we can put the money there.
This is part of what we do as well. We do a lot of, we have this capacity building program. We work with researchers in different, we started with the Africa, but we're planning to do this in all the other different regions.
How do you assess your progress with it? How you can say that we are ready now to go to the open access phase?
We continuously do evaluations, we have surveys, we have focus groups, we talk to all the people on our knowledge-based researchers, and we try to, see what is it that they need and where we want to go with that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. I think what's interesting there, what you were saying about bringing the services to the people, and maybe they don't always use them. Margaret, do you want to say something about your experiences in Malawi with that while Stephen comes up and sets himself up? Come and use the microphone if you like.
Yeah, I'll use the microphone.
Because you could say there's an awful lot of supply here, and sometimes maybe there's not, the demand is.
Yeah, I think I was just commenting to Martin that the gentleman from Ghana's video this morning was very relevant as well, just how difficult it is for people to have enough time to survive and do all the research and things as well. That Ghanaian, well, all of that video was quite moving, but that was very good. I have found, in terms of scientists' willingness to be exposed and to make time, I'm having an awful lot more success with the medical and nursing people than I had with the agriculture people. The agriculture people were kind of running all over the place. But what Liz asked earlier was about the work we'd already done in Bunda from the late 80s in putting together fairly solid databases of the research on Malawi, there was the maize database that was funded by Rockefeller, there was one on gender, there's one on fisheries, there's one on forestry, so a lot of work had been, and in those databases people were quite happy to have their publications there, but of course these were not yet web available. So I kind of see what you mean. In some institutions people are worried about plagiarism, but sometimes you can explain that quite easily to them, that when something is web available, it's the ideal way to capture plagiarism, where you can't capture it when the things are still not web available. So it's a matter of working intensively on the ground with the researchers, that they understand that they have to be on the bus if it comes to them, if they're lucky enough for it to come to them.
Thanks, Margaret. We'll come back to some of these issues towards the end, I think, when we have all the speakers. Okay, this is go ahead, Steve.
Thank you very much, Peter. I have to admit that I'm an imposter. I shouldn't really be doing this talk at all. I have to pay reverence to Maurice Long, the publisher coordinator of HINARI and AGORA, who, but for the circumstances of his brother's severe illness, would have been here today and doing a much better presentation than I will do, I can assure you. Maurice is really the founding force and the driving impetus behind these two initiatives. And as we go through them now, we'll see some of the aspects that we've been talking about. I also intend to try and, as Peter was talking about the big five, try and draw some similarities, and I'm afraid the fourth and fifth speakers will have less and less that they can say that's new, because indeed a lot of the threads that I was going to pick up have already been covered, but maybe can stress them a little bit. Peter said no stats, but we're going to do a little bit of this, because otherwise you really won't. They're quite complicated programs for those of you who are not familiar with them. HINARI was launched in January 2002. It was a mold-breaking program at the time that it launched. Driven by the Director General of WHO and a whole host of collaborators in the commercial publishing industry, it really rolled back a frontier that those of us that have been involved in scientific research and development had not believed possible. That are now over 60 major scientific publishers in the health area should open up their content free to 69 of the poorest countries in the world. There's a little catch which we'll come to, because free is never completely free, but that set the tone for a minor revolution. We heard about Perry, and I will draw some similarities and context from there, but it was undoubtedly, with the help of Yale University, I would say a major revolution. On FAO through AGORA really coattailed, if you like, really came in on the back of that success. We used the same platform, we used the same methodologies, we used the same tools, and our Director General was very, very active. But I didn't introduce myself, did I? That was bad news. He told me to do that. I'm Stephen Rudgard, I'm from FAO. I told you who I wasn't, but I didn't tell you who I was. So FAO really came in on the back of the developments that WHO had pioneered. We've been running a lot less time, close on 2 years afterwards, in fact, that we launched. We're already up, however, to 30 commercial publishers. We rely very much on our collaboration with WHO and Cornell University that came in at the founding point in terms of setting up AGORA with this experience from the TEAL product, the Essential Electronic Agricultural Library, that had been co-funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. So the reason why our Director General got so excited about this was the private-public partnership, the unbelievable benefit to a host of developing country scientists for accessing the world's literature for free, brokered, if you like, through the UN and a host of other partners and collaborators. Now, again, some stats, because I think we need to put this in scale. There are 70 countries that are eligible. The countries were determined basically by GNP, gross national product per capita, in 2002. And the countries were selected by the publishers. Some were left out as viewed as commercial markets. The publishers determined that those countries would not be left in the list. But there were 70 countries eligible, or 69 in fact, but Iraq has been brought forward in the case of HINARI to the first phase under special plea. These 69 countries in the first phase have ultimately free access. There is no control, provided they register with WHO and they're authenticated, they can then have a free password. There are over 1,000 of those institutions registered in 64 countries. So, and the country list includes many countries that are so small and have so few institutions that I doubt they will ever have anybody registering. Some small islands in the Pacific, for instance, that probably between the 500 inhabitants may not be that interested in health information. In the second phase, 43 eligible countries in the lower middle income group, HINARI has had 650 organizations register. Those are the prime users. I assure you, most of the usage, and I'll give you some statistics on that, is coming from phase 2. I think we can come on to why. AGORA, 2 years behind. We've already got 590 institutions registered in the 60 countries, and registrations are happening all the time. We've just had another batch registering due to a training course, for instance. As we get out there and we market and we talk to partners, more and more people register. Just 12 months worth of stats, over 1,200,000 login sessions on HINARI. That's not a trivial number. Nearly 3 million PDF full-text articles downloaded in a year. Some of the usage statistics out of the universities, particularly in phase 2 countries, are beating major medical faculties in Europe and North America. AGORA, we're a baby by comparison, but remember that all our access is through phase 1 countries only. We will be switching phase 2 on hopefully next year, but 40,000 login sessions seems a tiny number by comparison with 1,200,000. 120,000 PDF articles downloaded, but bearing in mind that Canto University is pulling over 3,000 PDFs a month in its own right. There is out there a pent-up usage if you switch it on. So we're very passive about this in a sense. We provide the gateway, we provide the security, if you like. Clearly, between the two initiatives, we've got more than 3,000 leading research journals from, as I said, over 90 international publishers. We're not really aiming at the frontline doctors, the people who use research literature. I think we all know who they are. The others are welcome to access, provided they can get to an institution which is eligible to register. By the way, neither of these programs is able to register NGOs or international organizations. There is a fundamental problem there. The publishers only wanted public sector organizations of a national nature. We don't, through HINARI and AGORA, look at locally published information. Perry has focused so beautifully on that, and I'll talk a little bit later today about how we might be able to do that through other means. And that's the reason why also for the strong partnership with programs like Perry, because if you're going to turn on the content coming from the Southern Hemisphere, HINARI and AGORA are really not about doing that. We do realize that we have to be in the training business. We're not the only ones in the training business, and one of the prime concerns for us is that we should maximize the efficiency in which we provide training. We don't want 7 or 8 agencies running around developing countries trying to do training and information access when we could easily be collaborating and maximizing efficiency. The usage will only come up if we train. We're dealing with we heard 15, 20 years of journal lack. In some cases, it's longer than that. People have lost the information habit. There's not just a can you use the internet question. This is research literature. Do you remember what it looked like? We've been conducting sensitization sessions in the Lao Republic, for instance, where researchers simply don't know what the international research literature is. They've never consulted it. We go to countries in Central Asia where there's simply no English spoken or read. What language is the majority of the world's scientific literature in? It's not surprising that Turkmenistan is not accessing HINARI very much. There's all sorts of fundamental barriers that we have to try and get around. We can't train people how to read English. We can't install better internet connectivity. But in terms of using these sorts of tools, we certainly can and are. We're doing it through partners. We're doing joint training, as I say, funded by Rockefeller, DFID, the World Bank TDR program, Tropical Disease Research Program. And as much as possible, pushing this sort of work away from FAO and WHO to partners based locally. We don't believe it's at all efficient to be flying expensive staff from international agencies around the world to give training programs. And we don't do that. We try to avoid doing that as much as possible. We've produced a training resource disc, and I have one here for trainers to train people how to use HINARI and AGORA, backup support materials and so on. But despite all of this, the majority of the people, of the organizations, particularly in phase 1 countries, usage is low or minimal or even none. Now, why should that be? We just had a dialogue about why that should be. Clearly, one of the reasons is that web access is costly and unreliable. If you've ever tried, as we've actually metered, accessing a research article and downloading a 5 megabyte article over a dial-up modem, and it taking more than half an hour to do so, and if there's a line break in the middle, you have to start all over again. And you won't be doing that if you want 30 articles out of something like HINARI. You won't come back until somebody improves your internet access. But there are a whole load of other anecdotal reasons as to why people are not, I say anecdotal because, as I'll come on to say, we're going to try and get this more pinned down. So the hidden cost in HINARI and AGORA is the internet access. Don't charge for the content, but sometimes if you look at purchasing power parity, the ability to pay for internet access is really not good. We'd like to look at trying to create alternative technologies such as download managers, but in the end, it's got to be an advocacy platform to try and improve connectivity. Beyond the connectivity issue, you've got issues of librarians who are gatekeepers, who do not give out the institutional password. Unbelievable, but true. They've got access to all this literature, and they've never told anyone in their institution. You talk to faculty, and they say, gosh, this is really interesting. I must make sure my university's registered for HINARI. You check, and they are, and they've been registered for 3 years. And there's a neural networking process to get that information out. It's free, but nobody seems to be really promulgating it at local level. It comes back to this incentive question that we had earlier. Are people doing research, actually? Or are they, as we saw in our wonderful video this morning, doing a whole bunch of consultancies and not attending to their core jobs? So we have a series of questions that come not just to HINARI and AGORA, but to everything that we'll be talking about today. We need also to let authors and journal editors know about HINARI and AGORA. We're encountering some resistance among some of the society publishers in the US that don't want to join AGORA. It's tough when we have to try and persuade them that this model will not undermine their revenues, will leave their commercial basis intact. They don't necessarily believe us. We're also struggling. We've just got our first French language journals into AGORA, a major revolution. We should have more other language material, and that's a major target for us. We need to increase the grant funds, not just for HINARI and AGORA, because a lot of the money they're going to Perry is in the end achieving the same objectives that we are, to promote usage and bring up skills. We are just starting a major evaluation of HINARI and AGORA. To look at the use of the programs, to find out why people are not using it, based on face-to-face interviews in the major regions in which both programs are accessible, quantitative email surveys, to get as much, not anecdotal evidence, but quantifiable evidence, empirical evidence to look at these issues. This evaluation has been funded by the UK government, Department for International Development, DFID, and we're putting all the associated partners are putting their effort in to try and make this a really good evaluation. HINARI and AGORA, as presently constituted, have agreement with the publishers to run till 31st of December 2006. Through not unclever advocacy, we've very much linked these two programs to the Millennium Development Goals. We see them running, therefore, at least until 2015, if the publishers will allow it. The summer meeting next year will receive the results of the evaluation and decide what happens to these programs beyond the 1st of January 2007. It's very likely the Phase 1 countries will continue to get access. The question is undoubtedly over how the publishers wish to see Phase 2 countries handled, because they're potentially revenue bases and they get a little bit more sensitive about that. We'll also continue to talk to initiatives such as Perry and Eiffel that are looking at a more commercial basis, transferring this grant-funded or free access into a more sustainable paying system, which I think all of us would like to see in due course. But we really are battling with this process of switching on the mentality to, yes, I need to access scientific information and I can now do it, that had dropped away in so many institutions that I've visited over the years. And the objective of HINARI and AGORA is the objective of virtually everyone in this room, to improve the quality of research. And let's see if we can do that, not just by measuring the number of PDF downloads, but looking at the greater impact in terms of the quality of research. And those are the two URLs.
Thanks, Stephen. Just perfectly timed. Are there a quick couple of questions, clarifications? Margaret?
More a comment than a question. You know, we've been running HINARI training at my college the last year. I think all of our faculty have gone through a one-day training course using partly the HINARI disc, but we also incorporate things like the Perry Resources EBSCO and also the Nursing Council and some other groups who are relevant. And I do a questionnaire about a month or two after the course just to say, what has it meant to you, what are you doing with it? And in your statistics it might look like a failure, but I was delighted that the majority of the faculty said we're incorporating it into our teaching materials. I found that really quite exciting. I thought they'd be using it for proposal development, which is really important, but I think when the library is rather obsolescent, if they're now able to bring the latest materials into teaching, you know, the degree students, that's something that's going to have a long-term ripple.
I totally agree. I think we're building here the next generation of users. I think this is a very, very important point, to get professors not only for their own benefit, but highlighting to the students what they can get. That's why places like Canto University have such high levels of access. Their faculty switched on, they're really promoting the resource to the students, to the masters and postgraduate students who are doing research and who are therefore requiring access. And I think it's building not just for today's generation, but the next one as well. And we've actually done now, as I said, a resource CD with a whole bunch of AGORA and HINARI training materials that Gratian Chimwaza's group, operating out of Harare, are using, and I can send you as many copies of the disc as you like, or you can send you one and you can copy it yourself. But these are things definitely promulgating is very, very important. And good news travels depressingly slowly. Bad news travels very fast. Good news travels very slowly. We need to get it out faster.
Thanks, Stephen. Maybe it's worth saying that the difference between the Group 1 and the Group 2 countries, the Group 1 gets it completely free.
Ah, yes, I didn't say that.
And the Group 2 do have to make a payment.
Yeah, the Group 2 countries have to pay the sum of $1,000 per institution per year, which when you're looking in the context of AGORA content, if you were to buy it commercially, is worth about $600,000 to $700,000 a year, and HINARI content is probably double that. $1,000 a year seems a pretty good price.
Thanks. Okay, is there a question? Liz, you have something? There are two questions, I think. Two more in the middle. Augustin.
One short comment and one question. In terms of evaluation, it's really important that the HINARI and AGORA people do the evaluation, but one of the problems is that if you get a free resource, you don't always evaluate what you're getting because it's free. And it seems to me that the institutions themselves need to put in place now evaluation strategies, whether it's the kinds of questionnaires that Margaret talked about, or some other kind of strategy, so that once they're moved into a phase 2 category and they have to pay for it, they can produce statistics to their leadership to say, these people are using the resource, this is what they're doing with it. Or they can decide no one is using the resource and therefore we don't need to pay for it. So that, you know, I very much hope that as you work with the institutions and the consortia that you're also working with them on how to evaluate. But I'd like to ask a question too, because this is something that's concerned me for a while. AGORA and HINARI are absolutely fantastic resources, but the most expensive journals are in the physical, the engineering, and the mathematical sciences. And I wonder whether anyone has had any success in talking with those publishers about creating something similar to the wonderful work being done by HINARI and AGORA.
I'll look at the first question. In terms of evaluation, we can see without moving a yard from our offices what the usage is. So that side of it, we meter all the accesses because unlike some other programs, everything comes through a box in Geneva, so we know all the accesses come by institution, we know who's doing what. But I do like your idea of like an evaluation pack. Here you are within your institution, you do this evaluation if you want to show people what's up and how the resource is being used. I think that's a grand idea. We will never move people from phase 1 to phase 2. Phase 1 countries, at least for the foreseeable future, the publishers may change the model. Much more likely that we take up something like the Perry model, where you have a consortium, IFL do the same, where you have a consortium of paying institutions. At that point, yes, usage, metered usage, showing impact is very important.
We need to do it while it's free.
Absolutely, I completely agree, completely agree. In terms of the really heavy sciences, physics and maths, I can't tell you. I mean, the reason why I know why health and agriculture started, they're very much in the Millennium Development Goals. The first goal is about poverty alleviation and hunger, and behind all of that you'll find the health thread running through all the development goals. Nobody really in there is talking about mathematics and physics. So it's not to say that they're not important, but I think they were put down the scale. We have had discussion about environmental journals, but we're a bit confused about the relationship between agriculture in the broad sense and environment. We don't necessarily see there's a huge difference there. But I couldn't tell you whether anyone's talked about that, but I'm sure Perry can.
You can respond to that, Martin. If there's another question, there's 2 more questions, then we will...
I mean, just quickly, Perry and INASP have worked with some of the kinds of publishers that you mentioned, people like IEEE, but with restricted numbers of countries in a kind of, like the phase 2 kind of countries from HINARI and AGORA. And what's interesting is that when they're in a position to pay and evaluate content, some of that content is highly valued and they're ready to pay. But some of those publishers, as with all of these publishers, they're very variable bunch. Some will work readily with some countries and the whole concept, and some are very reluctant and some won't do it at all. But for instance, some of the IEEE and various maths resources, we have worked with the Perry program in Pakistan and their Higher Education Commission's digital library program to negotiate and get kind of this preferential access, the whole kind of thing. But it's not, there's not like a nice coherent unit like there is with health, or, but it is there. I mean, there's a lot of titles in Perry, but then it needs, for the understanding of the information of what's available, to be selected as a kind of resource, and that in my experience is only done, well, it's generally done most effectively when there's local funds supporting it, because then
is the evaluation, should we have A over B? Because if they're both free, we'll have both of them.
Yes, we can come back on, I think, some of these issues. There's another question over here, then raise that one, and then we'll...
I have a question related to building research capacity. Earlier today, there was reference to about, if you want someone to fish, you teach them how to fish. I mean, it seems to me this particular strategy is turning on the tap water and then turning it off when someone really thirsty, and then instead of teaching them how to build a well, she's saying, well, here's the tap, you can turn it on for you, but someone can turn it off any time, we don't know when. How does that relate to local capacity building?
Oh, you're on a very sore point there. Actually, it's true. You turn something on, and in some cases, everybody is then suddenly enlivened, and you hold the axe and say, at some point this will be chopped. We don't know when, we can't tell you when, because the gift is in the hands of the commercial publishers. They may withdraw, they may move to other models, they may move to a pay-as-you-go model. But actually, I think you will hear also today about other themes which they have to, the institutions have to be more responsible in the end about accessing information. If they're really going to be contributing to the research community in a way which is appropriate, they have to see what other people are doing. And I think in too many cases, they'd simply regarded that as a luxury they couldn't afford. And for 15 years, stopped looking at the world's literature, other than what their colleagues around the world could send them. A little neural network, I've got somebody over there who's doing the same research as me. I met him at a meeting, he's going to send me a few papers. But they weren't doing systematic searching. If we can switch that back on while the access is low cost and affordable, low cost, free or affordable, then you build the case, hopefully, for saying, yes, actually, with internet access, with web access, we can sustain this. Because we can negotiate with the publishers, because the publishers have a cost of putting the information on the web, whether they have one customer or 1 million customers. The incremental cost of a single extra registered user from Malawi is practically nil. That's why the publishers have done the model that they've done. And that's why they would look very, very carefully at sustainable pricing models. If people are prepared to pay as they transition, I mean, there's a hidden agenda behind HINARI and AGORA, which is build markets. We know that.
Wes, can your question come at the end? Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen. Let's move on a bit. Thank you. Okay. Introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm going to introduce myself. Excuse my accent, I'm French. I'm Augustin Gachignard. I'm working for a project called CIST. I'm going to present to you right now. I'm the coordinator of this project. I'm based in Accra, in Ghana. So this project CIST stands for Scientific and Technical Information System. In fact, it's in French, Système d'information scientifique et technique. It's a project from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I'm going to present it to you right now and present a few actions we have taken and the tool we are trying to implement. So this is the